Where are we at for radio?
Like 10 seconds, assuming it works. All right, it should be live, but it's laggy.
All right. Well, hey, everyone over on Aftermath FM, hopefully. Welcome to the show. This is Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikin, and I am here in the middle of flipping nowhere, joined by my better than your co-host, Glory Jones. What's happening, Jones? What's up?
A year flew by. Wow.
Jones, we got a couple of things to celebrate on the show today. We got a number of things to celebrate on the show today. Not only has Glory Jones been with the show for 1 year today, the show itself, just by virtue of calendar lining up, is 3 today. So happy birthday to the show. Happy anniversary to Glory Jones. We're going to be joined by Ian Schlakman. At some point, we're going to open the phone lines. I'm going to make the StreamYard link available to the Slow News Day Wrench Gang on YouTube. If you're in the Slow News Day Discord, let me know. And in the second half of the show, we can do like an open moderator panel or something. We're going to try and have as much fun as humanly possible because we live in a fucking cartoon. So in light of that, we're going to now bring in one of my favorite people on the planet. I adored this gentleman and have had the good fortune of hanging out with him a few times in person, both at events and at Reverend Annie's house. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Schlakman. Welcome back to the show, my friend, my brother. How you doing? It's fantastic to see you.
Hey, I'm pretty good. Congrats, 3 years. Congrats, Glory, 1 year. It's freaking amazing. Unbelievable.
Thanks, Ian.
That is unreal. You guys are keeping up with so much more crap than I could. I'll tell you right now.
What's insane to me is that, like, at the start of last year, the start of 2020, when we were getting ready to what were we doing? We were coming back from DC. That's what it was. It was in that little period between like the insurrection and our March Clovers for Assange event. And that's when Glory Jones popped up. I think in I make you a mod in fucking September of when I got high at DC.
Yeah, it was September. Because I just remember at that point, I was in like several people's chats for like months, and I was already mod in a bunch of them. And then one day in a Twitter DM group, Steve was just like, Glory, I noticed you weren't a mod. Fix that.
Dude,
freaking awesome.
I saw Glory on the convo couch. And I remember being like, oh shit. If I don't find a Glory Jones, I'm gonna have to get this Glory Jones. And then, like, it turns out, and this is to the detriment of the world, there is only one Glory Jones. Like, there ought to be several. There should be. But there's one. And so just I'm fucking incredibly fortunate and very, very lucky that Jones fucks around with this show. And it's been to the benefit of the show 100% every time. Every time. Thank you for being here, Glory Jones.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be on Scoop Gang.
Fucking love you, dude. The show has a sponsor. The sponsor of the show, Matrix Bars. Matrix Bars are 3.5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms in a delicious chocolate bar. And you can get a hold of them by scanning the QR code right over there by Glory Jones's head. You can also DM them on Twitter or Instagram at Matrix Genetics, MatrixGenetics. They usually ship in about a week. Every time that I've got them, they've been in some sort of like insulated pouch because it's been hot as fuck. That's about to not be the case for a long time, but still, good idea. I've got stickers and like these things that have a sticker and a QR code on them. Trip glasses. They're doing it. They're trying, man. They're trying. Give them a shot, dude. I've never not experienced them working. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've eaten different amounts and they've all done a little bit more than what I thought they would every time that I've eaten them. So, I like, this show isn't one for sponsors. We're not out here talking to you about Blue Chew every 20 minutes. You know, that's not how it works. But they let me test drive it before I allowed them to sponsor the show. I let them sponsor the show. Matrix Bars. Give it a go, man. Fuck it. You know, why not? Ian, my friend, how are you? What have you been up to?
I'm pretty good. Probably better if I had one of those Matrix bars, to be honest with you. I really
make it happen, my friend.
I really want to try. I got to go out to the middle of nowhere where you are, Steve, and just try that kind of shit. I really got to do it, honestly. I don't know how you live in this world without that kind of assistance these days. I'll put it that way, because it's a fucking hellscape. I just remember this is the show where I can curse indiscriminately, and I'm going to do that. So
yeah.
In fact, I've got my fuck censorship shirt on. Here we go.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh,
dude.
nice.
Hell yeah!
So yeah,
that was absolutely. A fantastic event.
Yeah.
That whole trip was hella good. That was a good time. And all of it happened during lockdown.
That's right. Yeah. It's completely amazing that you guys are still doing this, because it's just such a rough time to be out there reporting on these kinds of topics. The censorship has gone up to 11. I mean, it's just absolutely mental what's going on in the world right now. The narratives that you're allowed to pitch and allowed to talk about, you know, what you're shut down with, what you're canceled on, it's just absolutely insane. And everything's just blurring together in a way that I don't know. I don't know if anyone could have predicted the outcome here, really. And I don't know where it's going, to be frank with you, either. But it's not going anyplace good, I can tell you that.
I think if it's not going anywhere good, I think it's at least going somewhere crazy.
I have a lot of hindsight issues with Jon Stewart and The Daily Show. I had significant qualms with The Daily Show while it was happening. Still, I mean, it broke the way news worked. The Daily Show broke the way news worked. It really did. It's like we should do an entire show, like 2 or 3 hours of just going off on the way that the world changed as a result of both The Daily Show and WikiLeaks. News reporting with those two things on either side of each other. That would be fascinating. But the one thing that Jon Stewart said, well, not the one thing, because I genuinely like the guy. There's a lot of things that he said that I've been like, oh yeah, that's right on. But what he said about reporting the news, covering the news, and this is when he broke Crossfire. I don't know if anybody remembers this, Jon Stewart went on Crossfire. It had Paul Begala, who is a like shriveled Mr. Potato Head, and liberal mouthpiece. And then Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was the other, but back when Tucker had a bow tie, he was like in his mid-30s, rocking the bow tie. Tucker Carlson had the same haircut though, the exact same haircut. You did. It's beautiful, dude. That's a guy whose face has just literally not changed in 15 years at all. I don't know what kind of, chemical processes he's going through. That's not clean living. You don't do Tucker's show and live clean. That's just not how that works. But I mean, his face hasn't changed. What Stewart said, because they asked him, they're like, well, what happens if John Kerry gets elected? How does your show change? And Stewart goes, the only way that my show changes is if the world gets any less absurd. And I don't see the world becoming less absurd under President John Kerry. Do you know what I mean? And like, that was his point. And that was in what, 2004? Must have been 2003, something like that.
Yeah,
because we were talking about Kerry, and here we are almost 20 years later. The world has gotten significantly more absurd. Our politics have become, because the lane between R&D has gotten thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. The politics surrounding those issues have de facto become more absurd. Yeah. We have to argue about all the dumb shit, because if we stop for 10 seconds, we would go, oh my God, it's the exact same demons running the show from 40 years ago who have just thrown different actors at us.
You have to argue about sexual anarchy. Oh! Which, I mean, I was talking with Ali and Sebs about this the other day. Isn't that just being single?
Kinda. Yeah. I guess technically we're in a sexually anarchistic relationship with everyone.
I don't even, like, is that get into consent issues? Am I just in that without people? Like, I don't even know what
that's what I'm saying. You and I, Ian, right now are in a sexually anarchistic relationship. You are not using force over me. I'm not using force over you. I'm not trying to push my sexuality on you.
Well, I'm sorry.
Essentially, that's an anarchistic relationship that we're all in right now. Right now, we are all experiencing an anarchistic relationship. No one is trying to use force or influence over the other person. We all like are letting each other have our own space. Like, this is the Slow News Day space. So maybe you're going to be like a little bit,
space.
You just said, I know I'm in this space. I can cuss more.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
Right, because you know that in this relationship, that's one of the things that you don't have to worry. So all we're doing is adding an adjective to it.
We practice discourse anarchy at Slow News Day.
Well, I apologize then, Steve, on behalf of our neglected anarchic sexual relationship. I haven't invited you down to Dumpster Dive or to go to the Free Farm here in Baltimore. Next time you come up to DC, I have to nurture our relationship and invite you to those places. Same goes for you, Dr. Glory. There,
we're doing
anytime.
We're doing it.
Anytime.
We're doing it. We'll have a
Baltimore has a fantastic anarchist scene, to be frank with you. There was a professor here who passed away a couple of years ago when I was working on an alternative currency project, who tried to do a whole dissertation on the Baltimore anarchist scene, and his higher ups thought he was insane. And he wound up passing away before he could finish arguing with them about the validity of the project. But yeah, I mean, more power to you. I mean, I think that kind of shows just the sheer schisms of reality that we're all facing right now. you know, we're all kind of switching codes and going on our lives in different manners during the day, and then come onto a show like this and switch back and then go. I mean, maybe not Steve, because it's Steve, you live in the middle of nowhere. You could be in one reality all day, or at least attempt to. But I think most people, you know, they just have to survive at this point. I mean, you know, it's just absolutely nuts out there.
So my good buddy, who lives right outside of Baltimore. I probably talked about him when I was out there. See,
Yeah.
I ended up going and staying with him for a couple of days after we were done hanging out. And he pitched this idea to me, and then we've kind of developed it over the years. But the way that like Western society or global society operates, it forces dissociative identity disorder on people, because you are forced to, by societal dictates, to be multiple different people as a child in multiple different locations, based on the type of childhood you have, where maybe you can be yourself for limited hours when nobody else is watching, and that's how you're brought up to identify being yourself. It's a shameful or secret thing, it's a private thing. Then you have to be this person at school, you may have to be this person at church, you may be able to be a little bit more of yourself around some adults. You are absolutely not allowed to be yourself around multiple adults for multiple different reasons, and it just sort of creates this almost schizophrenia. And everybody breaks different, Ian. Everybody breaks different. So when you're forcing that onto a population, people are going to break different, and some of them do it earlier, some of them do it later, some of them don't. And a lot of people bounce back positive, but a lot of people bounce back worse and worse and worse. You'll see people who quit heroin who just become a drunk for 30 years. You'll see people who quit speed who then go and become a pill junkie for 30 years, you know, and shit like that, because when you break and you have nobody around who knows how to heal, you heal wrong, right? That's why AA is so fucked up, because it's full of people who healed wrong and don't understand it, haven't figured that bit out, and they're just replacing crutch for crutch for crutch. You know, sometimes it breaks the other way, and people get it, and they, you know, go on and do whatever they're going to do with their lives, and it doesn't completely consume them.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're talking about this, because I've been trying miserably to finish a book that I've been working on since. I'm just gonna spill all this on your show, because this is honestly my favorite show. Don't tell anyone else that. I love everyone else's show. I love everyone else's show. I really do. But you just let me say shit that no one else is gonna say. You just go like man, when that stuff with the Green Party happened, you were like, let's roast some sacred cows. It's like, fuck, like that's just the best.
I did. I said that to you. That's the exact sentence I said to you.
That's the you need. I mean, man, you gotta get this damn story out there, because you know what pisses me off is, like, people want to spend so much time telling a specific narrative or a specific section or a specific type of story on their specific type of show, and you're not even, like, until you, like, come to terms with what happened, until you actually, like, get the whole thing out there, the whole ugly mess out there of whatever it is happening today, which is every day is practically a new ugly mess. Then you can't dissect it. You can't go into it. You can't analyze it. Like, if people want to, like, you know, spin a narrative before they've even disclosed everything. It's like you used to have the political, you know, BS in Washington, like, oh, let's release everything on a Friday, you know, kind of because it's a slow news day, not to the titular line of your show here, yeah. And now every day is Friday. Every day is like, we're going to spin this in such a carefully crafted way that if we do get the information out, no one will ever freaking understand it. It's just such bullshit. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's really, really difficult when, you know, I feel like everything is just so sped up compared to previous generations and what you read about in history books. You just have to do so much more these days. You're expected to do so much more and wear so many different masks, be so many different people. It's really, really tough. And
it's confusing.
It's confusing as hell, and it's so difficult to process what you've been through when you're just going in the middle of going through it. Is the other kind of like big challenge that I think we're all kind of facing, because it's like not like we have time to process what's happening politically or historically or in our own lives. We have to go through it every single day. You got to keep at it every single day. It's rough.
Yeah, it's like the powers that be are now manufacturing confusion.
Very intentionally.
I know exactly what I'm doing, by the way, because Steve has been saying he was going to write a book called Manufacturing Confusion for like a year now.
I am. Look, dude, I've been through some shit, Jones. I've been through some shit. All right. I have a book outline. I also want to I also have like a whole ass other book with my own personal anarchistic manifesto that's in my head that's sort of coming out accidentally. So I might use that as like a training exercise for the although the manufacturing confusion book is going to be easy. I just got to sit my shit down and do it.
It's tough, all the shit we put on ourselves, man. It's really, really tough, and there's so much that we could talk about right here today. I mean, there's so much going on in the world. I mean, it's just an absolutely rough time. You know, I mean, we could talk about what's going on in the projects of Baltimore. We could talk about what's going on with I've never seen the cybersecurity situation in this country get so crazy too. I think that's something that is really interesting that's not being talked about. COVID is always on everyone's mind too. We could talk about that. I mean, it's just a shit show right now, and it's relentless. It's like I've started a week with, okay, I've got all these thousands of things to do in my personal, professional, and in my political life. And then I get a call from Annie, as you know, who was sick with COVID, and then I gotta, rush and deal with that. That's just the reality of our day to day now. There's no, what's a typical day anymore? You can't even keep track. It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the cybersecurity thing, it's like you have these very, very almost conveniently placed kind of, I guess, well, it started with ransomware attacks against like kind of key sort of like supply chain type deal, like the I forgot the name. Meat supplier had one, and then Colonial Pipeline had ransomware attacks, and then now, after a Facebook whistleblower, the very first whistleblower, I think, to receive a blue check instantly, comes out saying that and is paraded in front of Congress as sort of like this beacon of hope for government regulation and Facebook. Right after she comes out, suddenly Facebook goes down. It's pretty convenient. And to make the whole day weirder, that same day that Facebook was out for a couple hours, it rained in Los Angeles, which just like set everything off in my head. I was just like, okay, it's a bit weird today. So yeah.
Okay, so first, let's go back. Let's go back in time all the way to 2019. Ooh. In the Department of Homeland Security issuing elevated threat memos about an impending cyber pandemic and cyber attack and cyber this and cyber warfare and ransomware and blah, 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 blah. In 2019, these are coming out starting in March, and every month the DHS is hyping up the threat alert of cyber attacks. We did a whole ass show on election day with Whitney Webb and Jason Berman.
That was fun.
Oh, it was great. But I mean, this was what we were talking about because we had been talking about it for a year, and now that it's fucking coming down, like almost to the letter how it went in Cyber Polygon just a couple of months ago, which we covered, which like hardly anybody else did. It's like, fuck, dude. We have a video titled "Being Right Early Hurts" or something like that, or it's painful. And it's with Whitney. Because it's like, dude, Glory, one of her very first times on the show was like, yo, dude, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Like, fuck it. It's
stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. I think I said it at
and we've been telling people, like, you've had a long time to accept that there are societal managers who are never going to have your best interests in mind, who are using multiple different products to enforce and ensure an agenda of total control. This is not overly conspiratorial when there is overwhelming evidence to support it every single day. And the best way that you can resist this is to opt out from it. Central banks run this shit. Divest. All of us. People are talking about a general strike on like a what? Soon? Some shit like there's some summit or something like that. General strike. Are you fucking dumb? Nobody's gonna do that, but you can convince people to do targeted strikes.
Yes.
You can absolutely convince people to do targeted strikes. And if enough people are talking to enough groups about targeted strikes, it becomes a de facto general strike. You just don't have the cohesiveness that you're never going to get in this country to organize one. And that's fucking fine. That's okay. You guys can talk after the bad thing stops. The reward is what you get, deciding what you get to do next.
I love how you just linked cyber attacks with striking workers. That's absolutely amazing, because that's two things that are happening right now. And first of all, I just wanted to, I don't know how much you guys have covered this, because it's gotten so far under the radar, but the cyber attacks have absolutely not stopped. They've moved from ransomware to DDoS attacks. And this past 2-3 weeks, there have been DDoS, for those that may not know, is distributed denial of service. It just means that you can't use the stuff. They're just hackers are attacking them so hard, just going to the same site over and over and over again. It's a brunt attack that you just cannot access the service. So if you see a website that's down, but not necessarily they got in their shit, like they got into the database, that's probably a DDoS attack. So DDoS attacks have been happening on phone companies at a record pace. But because a lot of these phone companies are international or smaller, it's not like happening to Verizon. It's happening to little guys like bandwidth.com, people that you probably don't really know, but they run businesses, they run schools, they run airports, for example. Like, they're the VoIP service providers for a lot of these places, and they're underlying as well. And the government's really done like nothing about it. It's not making the news, like the meat packers you were talking about, Glory. Like, it's just not making the news. It's not hitting that critical mass. And they're like, I don't know, maybe we'll pay the ransom, maybe we won't, kind of thing. And then the attacks kind of dissipate, but then they come back because they're still vulnerable. So this, to me, seems like it's going to keep going on for quite some time. And as long as it doesn't make mainstream news, then nobody cares. So you try to call, a company to cancel service, and you can't, and you're charged for another month. Why? Because it's a cyber attack. So the company's not liable. They can keep billing you. Or maybe you got to make a mortgage payment. Can't call the company because their VoIP system's down. Not their fault. So they can just keep billing you. I mean, it's very small things, but this is the show that I could be hyperbolic, so I'm going to be hyperbolic. It will lead to the destruction of society. Society will break down because of this type of thing right here. Your VoIP service provider being down will lead to you, inevitably defaulting on your mortgages and loans and that kind of thing, and the whole system's going to collapse over this kind of crap. And I've long thought of that. Like, there's no obligation for a company to even keep their phone systems open, so they keep automating more crap. So, like, you can't even get to a service rep now. You can't cancel your shit. They just take it right out of your bank account. Like, society is kind of like slowly, through like small capitalist changes, like completely breaking down because capitalists are psychopaths and they realize that I don't have to service you. I just have to bleed you dry financially. And if you're bled dry financially, you can't hire a lawyer to sue me. So all good. I mean, like even when the last mortgage scandal happened in 2008, we found out that these large mortgage companies have VIP list. If you're a congressperson, you're getting that first rate service. If you're anybody else, they could just take your house. And if you don't have any sort of huge legal muscle behind you, you're just fucked. You're just screwed over. And I think that's sort of like, I might piss off some socialists when I say this. Maybe I'll gain some fans. I don't know. But like, I think when people talk about the last stage of capitalism being barbarism, I think this is what they kind of mean, because the lower class and the poor and the lumpen proletariat has always been just like smashed. Like those are the folks I think you see striking right now. The Kellogg's factory workers, the Nabisco workers before that. Those are the folks that are striking. But the middle class is always like, I'm doing okay. Well, like, guess what? Like, the capitalists hate you just as much. Like, their job is to extract capital from you. Their job is not to. And this is where I think I disagree with like capitalism is the conspiracy in my mind. Like. Yes, there are sophisticated capitalists that realize that, like, if you fuck over literally everyone, the whole system will fall. But there are also capitalists that realize, like, I've got a bunker and I've got a private island, so what the fuck do I care? Like, why do I care if the system falls? Like, who gives a shit? So, I mean, I'm all with you that I think that this is my life's work kind of is, we've got to align ourselves with striking workers, with people that we would that I think a lot of us were trained, especially in the middle class, to kind of be like, oh, you don't want to be that poor person. Oh, you don't want to work in the basement with the facilities people or the people working downstairs. You want to work upstairs at the top floor with the managers and stuff like that. Like, fuck all that shit, man. We have to align ourselves as one class that's not the ruling class, that's not the capitalist class, and coordinated striking efforts is a good way to start, and then supporting those efforts is the next thing that we all have to do collectively, because we're all not on the line there in Nabisco.
I mean, especially when you consider that via the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, it's very much kind of like a last-ditch power grab and a last hurrah for like this class of global elites to consolidate their resources one last time in, essentially commodifying and surveilling the human body and all of nature, really. Like going to like looking at deep sea mining and eventually probably like mining of the moon and asteroids as well as kind of like a way to really pillage more resources and something like, taking out the middleman and really hurting small businesses and small people and, like the little people like us is really a way to like put us under the boot again, to put it into that situation where it's like, oh, you will own nothing, but you'll like it. So, yeah.
There's a YouTube channel that I listen to when I'm on long drives, and it's called New Discourses. And I forget the guy's name who does it, but shouts to that channel, because it's a deconstruction of like woke leftism from a guy who went through the doctoral system in mathematics. And so he was like totally disconnected really from politics, was probably like, like rubber stamp liberal, basically, and was exposed to academia and came out the other side like, oh, this is insanity. And one of the things that he was talking about that I found really, really fascinating was this sort of overproduction of a graduate class of college educated, but entirely overproduced for their particular field in the workforce, class of people who are above, 100% above, going and getting one of those manual labor jobs or fucking working 2 bullshit jobs because they've got $240,000 of college debt and a degree that says they're worth 200 grand a year or 500 grand a year or whatever it is. You know, on paper, I'm worth, my education means my value at an hourly or annual amount equals, not what can I actually do to produce something for me, for my family, and for my community. And it was just a really wild conversation. Go ahead.
Well, I've been meaning to kind of get this out there because a while back I was with a group of like alternative currency folks in Baltimore, which I mentioned a little earlier, and I never talk about this because it was like right before Occupy, and then I got involved in Occupy and all this other stuff. But there were a lot of like socialists, like term progressives type in there, a lot of just like really old school anarchists and stuff like that. And at the time, this guy was really popular, and his name was Charles Eisenstein. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, but like Charles Eisenstein wrote from a like he wrote this book called Sacred Economics from a really like a real wishy-washy, like kumbaya type of like Pollyanna-ish like worldview of like he thought socialism was too harsh, so here's like nicer ways to do economics. And so many of the things that he wrote about, which is just kind of hilarious to me, he wrote about negative income tax as a way to like produce like more value or make people had to use their money up at a certain time. Now that's being talked about in really dangerous ways. He wrote about you'll own, like he was one of the first people that I've seen use the term you'll own nothing and love it. Like he wrote so the sharing economy was like super big back then. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like the sharing economy was created by like these like quasi liberal, quasi socialists in this progressive space, and it's been
they were
like
transhumanists too, right?
Yeah, the transhumanist movement has also been like back and forth between like
but no, I mean the people who came up with the sharing economy, aren't those guys like all super big into the transhumanist movement now? I'm almost positive it's the same crew.
I don't know, because I've always heard like these kind of like hippie types, you know, like talking about that like as like the future, which is hilarious because they were like older than boomers. Like they were the old boomers, so they owned a lot of shit. And second of all, like also it was kind of like I think there was some kind of thinking, but right before like Occupy movements, I guess that'd be what, like 2010, like where they were like, you know, everyone can't keep on this ownership course. So let's just tell people that they could rent everything and be happy or share everything. And like there were alternative, like there were like centers in Baltimore. I think they're still around. Like I was with the Baltimore Time Bank. That's still around. I was with the Baltimore Tool Library, which is a fantastic idea. It's a nonprofit. Everyone can rent tools for free. Like those are good ideas. But then like there's an alternative tool library that opened up that was like sponsored by Home Depot. Okay, that's kind of fucked up. Why is Home Depot sponsoring a supposedly free tool library? And now you go into the future one step further, and it's like GM's like, why own your car? We'll own your car. You can rent it from us all the time, and we'll send it out to other places. You know, it's like it's just the capitalism has such a way of emaciating itself and manipulating every possible good idea that these like progressives come up with. That I mean, you look at the Build Back Better plan. It's like it's like why are like if you're a socialist and you're for that, it's just like
why?
It's like we want to do what FDR do. We want a New Deal. We want to spend all this money. Okay, great. You're going to give it to like a Tennessee Valley Authority? No, we're going to give it to Ford. No, we're going to give it to Veolia, which is a France-based company. Like what? No, that's not what we did. That's not even a historical precedent. It's absolutely insane to me how people don't realize that without the revolution away from capitalist, or without defiantly saying that certain things should not be in the capitalist system, that they think we're going to get away from these problems. I mean, that's why I'm a revolutionary. I mean, revolution is the only answer. You cannot you cannot keep pouring money into this system and expect different results. The capitalists are just 3-4 steps ahead of you every time.
I would argue that the capitalists want nothing more than a revolution, or at least a managed revolution. Revolution takes you right back to where you started. That's a revolution. Takes you all the way back around to where you began. I would argue that what we need more is an ascension, where we have realized that our isms have failed us, because broken people produce broken isms as a way to solve the problems that they can't solve within themselves. So if you haven't healed, one thing you can do is latch on to an ism or an ideology, and you can allow that to be what you do instead of your healing. Do you know what I mean? And you can allow, as broken as you are, your brokenness to corrupt whatever that ideology is, especially if there are broken people that are, the message bearers for that, or the standard bearers of that ideology. I really like, I put a lot of thought to this, my friend. I have, and because I come out of that Occupy space, I come out of that, let's fucking burn this fucking shit down, kind of, that was the black flag that I knew. Yeah, and I agree with Michael Malice at this point that there are, the black flag comes in many, 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 many colors, does, and until you see it represented, where there's red, pink, blue, yellow, the blah 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 blah, gray, all this shit, and the one thing that we can mostly all agree on is that okay, rules but no rulers, and that anarchy isn't an ism, it's a relationship, and that relationship is rooted in, you do not speak for me and I do not speak for you, and all of all of the rest of our relationships, and transactions and everything else stem from that initial relationship. You don't speak for me and I don't speak for you. I'm not going to use force over you. You're going to use force over me. Nobody has a monopoly on violence here. And because nobody has a monopoly on violence, we're able to communicate and relate as human beings on a much more personal level, because there's no impending wall of violence that separates our I guess our ability to communicate.
Well, man, that makes me think of so many things. I mean, I've often.
By the way, Ian's the guy who I had up on as my banner image on my Twitter for a while, and the quote was something to the effect of like, "I hate that you made me look this up. Could you just stop knowing shit?" or something like that.
Oh,
I did. That was yeah, man. I mean, jeez. No, I mean. Well, a couple different things. So, like, first of all, I kind of want to just put out there that I absolutely agree that, like, if there was to be that's why I think that you're right. Even using the term revolution is problematic, because, like, that means so many different things, so many different people, and on top of that, the images that it brings to mind are probably not what would happen today. I mean, you can't just you can't put a square peg in a round pole. You can't take what's happening today, which is so accelerated in my mind, because I'm a bit of I like to think I'm an optimist on the future, believe it or not, even though that the proposition becomes more and more scary every day. But what's rough to me is that we do need a cultural revolution, in a sense where we need people to completely change their mindset when it comes to like what is acceptable and what's not. What do we allow the government to do? What do we allow what do we allow other people to do? Like what do we accept? I guess this kind of dovetails into the next thing that, that brings to mind, and that I've heard a lot of. It sounds to me like you're kind of making like a voluntarism argument, and it's a great argument. It's just that I think that kind of like presupposes like everyone lives in the mountains with their own plot of land. Like I once heard the guy that does Adam versus the Man, and it's a good guy.
Oh, Kokesh.
Adam Kokesh, yeah, Adam Kokesh, yeah. I once heard it like we had him there at a Zeitgeist Day once in Baltimore. We brought him on. We brought Lee Camp on, and man, they were great. And Kokesh, his talk was like fantastic, but it was kind of like, if you live on a plot of land and you have a 3D printer, pretty soon you could say fuck you to the rest of society and everything could be voluntary. And that's a great idea. I just don't know how that's going to actually work. And I think the first step would be like, can we at least get to a point culturally where if we see someone starving, we instinctively recognize that that's not okay? Or like, can we get to a point culturally where we go, I know that in society, if I am hungry, if I don't have a house, there are ways for me to get it. Because right now we're not in that place. Right now, everything is scarcity. So it's all about, I've got to get more and more land. I've got to get more and more housing units for my own kids. I've got to get, we do a food giveaway every week in Baltimore.
It's the three evils that MLK talked about. He said back in freaking, what was it, 1968, I think, or somewhere in the mid to late 60s, he said, we need a revolution of our values, because right now the three evils, and that's extreme materialism, militarism, and racism, have taken over society. And, that's where we are today still. So
I want John McAfee to respond to Ian so bad. No, that clip where McAfee talks about to me in this sweatshirt, as a matter of fact, where McAfee's talking about culture is the thinnest of all veneers. And like, oh, dude, it's amazing that guy was so trippy. But you're right. And I do think
I'm jealous, Steve, that you got to have that conversation with him. I really am. That's so cool. And I'm so glad that you did that interview with him. That guy should have gotten so much more.
You muted yourself, Ian.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. He was a living legend, and I'm so glad that you did that interview. But go ahead, finish your thought there.
No, it's just his point to that about like you would think that on an instinctual human level, anyone who saw a child starving or a child struggling for help would immediately reach out and immediately, and we're sort of conditioned now. And this isn't something McAfee talked about. This is just something that's like popping into my head in a minute. But we're conditioned now to look at homelessness as this is a state problem, or this is an individual person problem that they did to themselves, that they and they alone are now responsible for digging themselves out of. And I do think that there's a personal responsibility argument to be made on a couple of different levels, because I was voluntarily homeless. I've been involuntarily homeless too, and that sucked. It did. I would much rather be voluntarily homeless, but broadly, if you're not looking at homelessness or scarcity or starvation as a community sustainability problem, then you're not going to have a personal interest in solving it. And that's unfortunately what it takes to get people to do anything, is making it so that it's in their personal interest to do something about it, regardless of what it is.
And our society is set up in such a manner where all of this, I can speak for Baltimore, but I think it's happening everywhere, is like everything they're trying to do in Baltimore now revolves around the notion that you've got a lot of vacant or very poor housing stock, people living in them, basically, people that are homeless, and they're driving people into the city who are wealthier and wealthier. Like they're trying to make more luxury condos right on the water. They're trying to make, in the middle of climate change, which doesn't make any fucking sense. They're trying to do, like more and more middle class families from DC to get them up, or upper middle class from DC into Baltimore, which doesn't make any sense. They're driving a cultural way. They know what they're doing. They're not attracting people that are of the same. They're not attracting folks that have experienced homelessness, or that have, family that maybe is one step away from poverty. They're attracting folks that are very separated away from poverty, to purposely drive that wedge and to make sure that the cities like Baltimore are devoid of anyone that has empathy for the homeless, or for, people that are in poverty, people that have lived there for generations and kicked out of their houses. I mean, and we're seeing it firsthand with the work I do with Annie, with Reverend Chambers. They are every day closing housing projects, and they're offering, temporary housing to the residents in places in the county, and places out east, places out west, places north. And, inevitably, when people take those deals, they come back and say, hey, guess what? I need to live back here again because there's no services in the Pennsylvania, Maryland border, and I can't get anywhere, and I can't drive anywhere. I don't have a car, or they promised me free rent for a year and only gave me free rent for a month, and I'm screwed because I don't have a lawyer. Like it's just the level. It's a coordinated effort for sure, but it's so subtle to most because it just makes good business sense. So all you need to do is just bring in a CPA that's trained by, school to think this manner. And they're not like some evil dictator. They're just some CPA in Baltimore working on a new luxury apartment building. And, what's evil about that? You want to revitalize the city, don't you? So culturally, I really think, I love that you brought up MLK Glory, because one of the things that Andy talks about all the time is Minister Malcolm X, as she calls him, and she really talks about how if there was a homeless person on the street, or a sex worker that was beat up on the corner, he would minister to them like right then and there. He would help them out immediately. And that's the kind of thing that she does all the time. She cannot turn a blind eye to homelessness. She can't do it. She has to feed them. She has to help them. And I don't think that we are that evolved yet as a society. I think we're really far away. And if we were people of Annie Chambers, I think we'd be in much, much further along, and could live out some of these optimistic, futuristic dreams that I have in my head.
Oh, if we had more Reverend Annies.
One of my earliest memories of a comment in a live chat on a Slow News Day stream was from Ms. Tree. And she said, scope of experience determines relatability. And I have never, ever, ever, ever forgot that phrase, ever. And Reverend Annie has a scope of experience that makes it so that she can relate to anybody. Malcolm X, very, very broader scope, I would argue. But the link there is that both understand poverty and suffering. And the myth of the middle class, the American exceptionalism, the neoliberal management style has made it so there have now been at least 2 generations removed from that kind of suffering at a level of class that makes it so that understanding that and having the ability to process what it means, it isn't there. It's not that it's incapable of being there, but it's not there. So they don't have the scope of experience to relate to that person. They don't know how. And most of the time when people don't know how to do something, they either get mad or they get like depressed about it, and they either lash out or shut down and go away. And that's how they're dealing with it. I don't know. I'm spitballing.
I think there is a third method there too, and I think that a person could just be so broken or upset or dealing with something else that they're unable to make that connection in that moment. And that is truly, and I ask her this like almost every time I see her, how do you do it? Because she's got I'm gonna mess up the number now. She's got 25 kids. She's got 136, I think was the number she gave, or maybe it was 316. I might be messing up the digits. I can't remember. Grandkids, thousands of great grandkids at this point, and so she's experiencing, tragedies or positive things like a new grandkid being born like almost every other day. And I don't know how she's able to process, and plus her work in Baltimore. I mean, they did everything to try to smear that woman. I mean, she was smeared as this big time gang leader. They were constantly in her house trying to look for guns and other kinds of crazy crap. I mean, they were just constantly on the offensive with her. And, rather than break, she recognized that the more I do in my community, the more I put myself out there, the better everything is from a communal standpoint, from a standpoint. The other day, I'll just share this really brief story because it's really fresh on my mind. Annie and her husband had COVID, and she was actually doing okay, but her husband had double pneumonia. Tries to go to Johns Hopkins Hospital. They kick him out less than 12 hours later. To kick him onto the street, literally, just like Skid Row style. Here you go. Good luck. Gave him a bunch of scripts to go get at CVS. So I guess now he's got to walk everywhere and affect everyone on the way to CVS. Sure, that makes sense. And so he takes like maybe a half a city block and he collapses on the street. And 2 homeless men from the food giveaway that she does every week, like picked him up and like carried him like, over their shoulders back to his apartment and made sure he was set up in his house and locked the door on the way out. I mean, like that's the level of community that you can foster and create. And we just are so like, I mean, it's like, how hard is it drilled into you not to fuck with the homeless? Seriously. Like how hard is that drilled into all of us? I mean, this is just defying that nature and making those connections, even when it's imperfect, even when you're getting the shit kicked out of you in the newspapers, or there are people like she has to deal with like arguing with her about taking an extra box of hot dogs at her food giveaway. It's unreal. And it's something that I really strive for, because it's, I mean, man, I mean, when you get slammed and called all kinds of names and are defamed publicly, and she's been through it so many times, I don't think it's a matter of thick skin. I think it's a matter of just tenacity to just keep out there and realizing that the work you're doing matters, and they wouldn't be calling you these names if it didn't. It's a tough lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like just hearing like the stories that she tells and what she's been through even before her work in Baltimore, and like what she's done with the Black Panthers and all of that, it's like it just like amazes me every time to hear her stories, how she just keeps going and going and going through like all these childbirths to having people just close to her mutilated and even killed at the hands of the cops, being, you know, shot herself, or going through like, or, you know, like shutting down the strip with the KKK. I'll never forget that story ever. And it just speaks to how someone's willpower can eventually manifest itself, and someone's like spirit can eventually materialize in the form of like what you said, Ian, of like these acts of just pure, you know, community and looking out for each other. It's really something amazing, honestly.
You know, and what's fascinating about it is that oftentimes she allied herself with she considered herself a communist, you know, like through and through. She considered herself a Black Panther through and through. I think there was a time where she may have been into the Black nationalist scene, but rejected it. And you know, I just don't think it's really fascinating to be working with someone who's such a like an authentic person, because the labels so don't matter to her. Like she speaks. Well, some of the work that she did as a Panther was to get folks that were in sharecropper situations, in absolute like desolate poverty as sharecroppers. You know, obviously, former slave, you know, families that were Black in the Eastern Shore into Baltimore City, specifically so they could get access to decent modern day services, like having doctors nearby, having like food and schools, because they didn't even have schools. They were living like in like dirt hut type situations with very little resources. You know, she talks about like this extreme poverty, and it's not like, you know, I think part of us today, I don't know if it's because of times or because of the technology level or because of we're all on social media. I have no fucking clue. But I do know that like today, you know, if we were to decide to, you know, move a bunch of folks into Baltimore City, or if we were to decide to like take folks out to the country, there'd be like debate after debate, or like, what are the merits of that? Are we falling into this paradigm or that paradigm? Is that socialism, communism, anarchism, voluntarism, blah, blah, blah. You know, we just go back and forth on it. And back in her day, and what she did was just like, these people are living in squalor, in poverty. This is wrong. I'm going to go do this. I don't give a shit what other people think about this. I'm not going to go think about, you know, making my own, like, you know, earthy commune where things will be perpetually equal. I'm going to go get these people rescued now. And, you know, like, that to me is something that I really struggle with. Man, I love to live on my own earthy commune where everyone was equal. I think Steve might be halfway there, but man, it's just to just defy like any kind of, like, when I think of her, I really, and I'll say this on your show, you know, I feel, you know, like you guys will understand what I'm trying to say. Like, I think she was literally seen as like Reagan's welfare queen. I think that is literally how many people like saw her, and she just did not give a fuck. She just did not give a fuck, and it's paid off in spades for her.
She really did it. I remember the first, my first show co-hosting Slow News Day, where she came on, which was also my first time like getting to talk with her. Like she was saying how sometimes just to pay for like a next meal or a week's worth of groceries, they would scam money from politicians, and how she didn't care how people looked at her just because, you know, by like she would spread her message and do her work by any means necessary, regardless of whether she came from. Like she said something about Kamala Harris. She called her a witch, granted, but she was like, I think Kamala Harris is a witch, but if she came with a bag of money, I would take that bag of money and then step over her. And I was like, yes. I just love that.
And then she's still doing that too. When the child tax credit came out, she was like, "You got to print these up and hand these out at the food giveaway." And I was like, "This is from Kamala Harris's office." She's like, "It's gonna get people paid. People on the street are not gonna know about this program, and the government's gonna say, oh, they're paying all these people to get, to have to." A child tax credit for their kids. And she knows the people in her community were not going to get that money unless they advocated for themselves. She worked with a group of welfare rights union, they call themselves, which is still active out of Michigan now. We have a chapter here in Baltimore too, that actually work with Kamala's office to be like, hey, you have to get a phone line, not just an internet site, but a phone line where working mothers and all kinds of people can call and say, I didn't get the check. I didn't get the check, and you have to give me the check because I am someone that deserves this money. I have kids. I need help. So she just exactly, like, she just doesn't care any means necessary. She often talks about how that line is so misunderstood because everyone thinks it means violence, and she doesn't mean violence to her. It means any means necessary to get what your people need, to get what your family needs, to get your community fed. That's what it means.
Yeah.
I think at this point, I want to open up the phone lines. We'll see how long we can go without fuckery. Ian, you stay as long as you want, man. We're on the radio for about another hour. And if you're part of Slow News Day Wrench Gang and you want to jump in, you want a link, let us know. We'll make sure that you get one. And kind of do a free for all here. I do want to talk for a minute about there was all kinds of shit that I threw at Sleepy Josh last night to play or to queue up, but I think there's one thing absolutely in particular that I really want to talk about today because I don't see enough people doing it. So while we're getting the rest of that up and running and shit like that, this IRS tracking $600 payments has got me feeling a certain kind of way, you guys. It really does. We have the entirety of the predator class that gets to do what the fuck ever with their money, however they want, park it wherever they want, with as minimal oversight as humanly possible, considerably less in almost every case. And yet the Biden administration and the Internal Revenue Service want to monitor every single transaction that you and I make over $600. This should be sparking a fucking just shitstorm throughout every corner of the media. And I spent some significant time looking for it. And about the only people that are consistently talking about this, which is the weirdest place to find yourself aligned with, are the people who fucking run banks. They're like, yeah, no, we don't want you in our customer shit. It's feeling like, in as much as we had odd alignment during the Stop SOPA and Stop PIPA protests, where it was like, it's us and also Eric Schmidt agreeing, and also Julian Assange agreeing, that this is a bad idea. This is where we're kind of at, and we're going to need the exact same cooperation. We're going to need the exact same energy if we want to get something like this shut down. Like, this shit is pretty significant. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, go ahead, God Glory.
Oh, no, I was just going to say more or less the same as Steve. Like, no, thank you. Just
I could stay on if you guys want. That'd be cool. Like, totally no problem. This is a really tough one for me. I mean, the government already has so many ways that they could track you. They're basically just handing another way to the IRS. I mean, they can easily get your bank account records with almost no judicial oversight. I think that's been proven with the FISA courts. Yes, I'm going to say FISA courts. I mean, they could claim anything as international these days and just they can get your phone records, all that kind of crap. I am all for the government trying to get more money from large corporations, from very rich people. However, yeah, I mean, this is just such a I barely really understand what this is, because I've heard Janet Yellen talk about it directly. I know she's for this policy, and I get it. I also am really confused by it, because it sounds like it's going to be $600. If your bank account is less than $600 in it, then you're not going to be like bothered by this. So now they have to go into everyone's bank account, because now they're afraid that you could have $600 in multiple banks, in multiple bank accounts. So I mean, I just don't. It seems to me like it's really poorly thought through policy as usual. I think I would like. I've often wondered why the tax system in this country is so massively fucked up. It's just so massively fucked up. I don't think this is going to fix it. Because if you think about the way our system works, right? And when I became a small business owner, this is like immediately struck out to me. But even before that, it was like, this is fucked up. If you have to submit the forms yourself, you have to, at your own expense, at your own time, fill out all the paperwork. And then if you fill it out wrong, even accidentally, the government can come back at you and say, nope, you were wrong. Here's a massive fine. And now like have to lawyer up. And I hope you can afford it, because we're going to come after your shit. Like, that is a really fucked up way of doing taxation. It's an incredibly fucked up way of doing taxation. I don't understand why we do taxation like that. It is, it's all kinds of ist, like name your ist, it's it. So I'm not for that to begin with. And I mean, if you're asking me like what the solution is, I'd say like switching away from capitalism. So like, I feel bad for the bankers that have extra paperwork to do, but I feel bad for the credit unions. Like, credit unions, like actually anarchist organizations, like that's kind of like fucked up, but they're gonna have to keep track of this shit too. But like, I don't know. I maybe Steve, you can convince me that this is my fight. I don't know.
I feel like as we've seen over the last maybe really 5-10 years, this legitimate argument that centralized central bank backed fiat currency is garbage, and there are alternative currencies that are available, at least as a thought experiment, or in the incarnation they exist right now as a digital asset, that we can explore, and that there are counter economies that we can already engage in and operate in, and that the utilization across the let's say peasant class of these counter currencies, and the utilization of counter economics as a real-time solution to central bank backed problems, which, let's be honest, if we have 99 problems, at least 88 of them are central bank backed problems. That's where they stem from. So the rise of this has created such a backlash that when an organization like the IRS, and I understand that there are myriad ways to track us. I understand that there are myriad ways to, to pop up on somebody's radar. But $600 transactions, along at the same time that 85% of the country is a domestic terrorist, while the FBI is targeting school parents, the like PTA moms. Granted, they're QAnon PTA moms, but you gotta love them too. You do. You gotta love them. Fucking, they're not. It's just. I think I'd rather have a QAnon dad than a QAnon mom. But it's how I am. I don't know. But getting off topic here. But I mean, where I'm headed with this is that if anyone who has expressed anti-government sentiment, if anyone who is opposed to the further centralization of Western authoritarian regimes, is a domestic terrorist and they're monitoring your transactions above $600, I feel like as an organizing point, as a flashpoint or a rally point, something like this that can lead to so many other significant conversations is a really good thing to pay attention to right now, especially when they're trying to corner and capture the entire crypto economy, especially when they're trying to eliminate physical cash. You hear a lot of people talking right now about how you should try to be only spending cash. That there's people who think that it's somehow less trackable. It's really not. It's really not. It's a lot. I mean, okay, it's harder to track cash, but it is all, sequence numbers, has fucking identification strips in it, number of things like that. Harder to track than online banking for sure, but you got to be careful. I'm starting to ramble now. Jump in, cut me off. Somebody tell me.
I think you're convincing me, because you're saying 600 is such a low number. Like, all of the peasants need to put 600 in and out of their bank account. So, like, why that number? I think you're convincing me. And what's funny is that from what I understood from the debate, I don't think Janet Yellen had a good answer to why 600 and why. I almost felt like,
let's pull up that post article real quick, and we can.
Yeah, I can. Let me get that up here.
No idea what happened to Sleepy.
All right, we'll play the video here.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
I ate a couple of squares of Matrix bars about 40 minutes ago, and was not prepared for the silver gnome right there.
Okay.
She looks like she's either going to make me a pair of wooden shoes or steal my dreams.
Okay. All right.
There's an enormous tax gap in the United States, estimated at $7 trillion over the next 10 years in terms of a shortfall of tax collections to what we believe are owed. And that's not coming from people failing to report wage income or dividend income where there's good information. It comes from places where the information on income is opaque and can be hidden.
Oh. No, don't play that.
Do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the argument I heard, I think I heard it on C-SPAN. I must have heard it on C-SPAN. I don't know where else I would have heard it. The argument I heard against this, which was pretty much what bank account wouldn't be privy to this, because couldn't, if I have an unlimited amount of lawyers and accountants because I'm super rich, can I just put all my money into multiple bank accounts that are under $600? So, I mean, yeah, I kind of see your point. It's just going to result in a lot of peasants being spied on.
$600.
What
You can't
about
buy anything
But a
over
rich
If you
person,
got-
a rich person could do that. Like a rich person could say to another really rich person, "I'm going to buy your land under the table. So here's 200 bank accounts, all with $599 in them." And all the peasants can't do that. Like, I can't do that. I can't open that many bank accounts. I don't have the time in the world.
Or is this something that's like limited to, I mean, we're talking the IRS here, so it could be something that's like limited to America. I don't know if there's a way to like loophole shit to
I mean, this is so far, this remains a proposal, right?
to like process all your transactions on Epstein's private island or something. I don't know.
It's a proposal that has the backing of the Treasury Secretary. So Jones, I just dropped the Daily Mail link in the StreamYard chat.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of ads and shit like that. I know. I was trying to. I didn't have the bandwidth last night on every level to make slides for this. But Nebraska, the state of Nebraska and their government has already come out and said, we're not going to comply with this. This isn't going to be, no, go fuck yourself. And, I would like to see, I think, more and more states coming forward saying we are 100% not going to do this. You know, this is where the argument for, I guess, parallel societies or parallel structures operating at the individual state level can be made, because we do have a number of individual U.S. states that operate outside of the federal government's framework where cannabis is concerned. We've got a number that are doing that with psychedelic mushrooms. We've got Oregon has legalized all drugs. Ketamine is becoming available for therapy. You're going to see pushes for ketamine to become legalized in small amounts or medically across the board in states very soon. The same with MDMA. I can't read that quote from here, but it looks like it's important.
Oh, I was just highlighting different quotes. It said, I'll do the state treasury first. He said, my message is really simple. The people of Nebraska entrusted me to protect the privacy of these accounts, and I'm not going to comply with this. If the Biden administration sues me, we will take it all the way to the Supreme Court. We are going to fight every step of the way. And then Wyoming Senator Cynthia Loomis said, banks do not work for the IRS. This is invasive of privacy. Wyoming's people will literally find alternatives to traditional banks just to thwart IRS access to their personal information, not because they're trying to hide anything, but because they are not willing to share everything.
Right. That's a perfectly valid argument, and Wyoming could pull it off because there are literally more people incarcerated in Wyoming private prisons than there are actual citizens of the state of Wyoming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a different way to. Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with this kind of policy, but I do just want to point out that, like, when I was running for office multiple times, I had bank accounts that were closed on me simply because, like, the retail branch would be like, sure, let's open them up. No problem. Sounds good. You're running for office. That's interesting. And then someone in a back room somewhere would be like, I don't understand what this is. I don't understand why you're running for office. I don't understand anything about this. I'm just going to close this down. So, like, from a privacy standpoint, I get it. I totally understand that. I'm not for expanding random abuses into privacy, and that argument, oh, I have nothing to hide, bullshit, is just complete bullshit. I understand that, but it's actually like way more of a working class problem, because it's those that are working a farm with no one on the payroll to deal with the bank's bullshit. And now the bank is going to be pissed off because they're going to have to fill out another form every single time you do something over $600, that are going to get their accounts closed on them, because it's not going to, the bank's going to be fine at the end of the day. Even if this thing goes through, they're not going to be, they're literally too big to fail. It's the little guy it's going to get shit on. That's just the way it happens. It happened to me, happens to everyone.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's just so as this is effectively, I believe, one of the avenues by which we get to manipulate and sort of shepherd people in particular directions as we roll out the Western version of the social credit score, things like that, because luxury items like traveling or meat or a new winter coat or something like that are going to be things that you have to earn through your social credit. So if you know that all of your purchases are being tracked and monitored, if you know that all of your let's say larger dollar purchases are already being tracked and monitored, now you're in a kind of a mindset of, oh, well, I better not get anything that appears frivolous. I better not get anything that appears like I'm making an unnecessary expenditure, or else not only am I going to have to deal with the IRS, but it might ding my social credit. I'm not going to be able to buy my $400 steak this month. I promised my old lady, it was our 10th wedding anniversary, been saving all for 6 months to buy one piece of meat that we could share, because meat is now priced out of our fucking realm. Do you see where do you see what I'm saying? Like kind of how I'm.
I see what you're saying, but I mean, you hit like a hot button issue for me, which is the social credit system, because I have long argued that the U.S. and Western countries have a much harsher social credit, like a literal credit system, that now it's social media in the typical bullshit capitalist fashion of like, oh, there's nothing going on here. There's only like these small companies behind the scenes that are keeping track of your credit, and companies that are keeping track of your social life, and companies that are putting them together and creating metadata on you, but it's not the government doing it, so it's all okay. I mean, it's just such, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's definitely getting worse. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And I think that every single day it makes me more like fearful for where is like capitalism going. And I totally understand your perspective there. But I also think that it's already shut out so many people by virtue of the fact that I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying like I go to my credit score and they're like, okay, yeah, it's going up a tiny bit. Okay, great. What should I do? I don't like, it's like nonsense information. Too many lines of credit, but you need more lines of credit. What am I supposed to do with that? What the fuck? What the hell does that mean? I don't know what that means. What do you want? What do you want? Just tell. It would be. I'm not advocating for this. I'm just saying that if you juxtapose that to a system like China's that says write something nice about the government and then go buy this house, I think that's actually a more fair system than a bunch of like crazy people in suits behind the scenes literally giving me no information on how I could do anything like purchase property.
I would say it's a more direct system of manipulation.
Yeah,
I'm not for either system.
I don't know about more fair,
I'm not for
but it's
that. But I'm just saying, and there are lots of other ways in the U.S. because people always argue, oh, but in China you can't move around. There are tons of laws that you could break in the U.S. Do you know if you don't pay your child support payments in the U.S., they could take away your passport, take away your license? Like there
Yeah.
are ways that you could do that already. And there are literally like stories every day, like feel good feel terrible stories, I guess. Soldier comes home from overseas, turns out he has child support payments, turned out he wasn't making them, passport taken away, license taken away, basically going to go to jail the next day. Like that story's never resolved. You know, like these issues aren't fixed. It's just like
let me
let's talk
jump
about it
in
for a
here
fraction of a
real
section and stop.
Let me jump in here real quick. I want to do the last 30 minutes of this over on the Rockfin so that we can talk completely freely. Go ahead. I'm going to grab the link to that because we barely talked about some of the things that would normally get us thrown off of YouTube. Thank you, Jones. I'm going to do that one more time. And come see us over on the Rockfin. Sleepy, if you're able, go ahead and open up the phone lines.
That's how I've already.
And
Those open like for 20 minutes and nothing rang.
Okay.
The
I didn't know.
Too good.
No idea. So we are off of YouTube now.